$4. That's the whole price. And it keeps food good for 25 years. No freezer, no electricity, no vacuum machine that dies the day the warranty ends. Just one simple object the Amish have kept on their shelves for over 100 years. You walk past it 100 times at the flea market, at the estate sale, at your own grandmother's house, and nobody told you what it really does. Here's the part that's going to stick with you. The food you throw out every single month, most of it never needed to die. It's spoiled because of 3 things you can stop for $4. I learned this in Holmes County, Ohio. First time I sat in an Amish kitchen near Mount Hope, I kept looking for the pantry, the big shelves, the cans, and there weren't any. Just a few of these plain brown crocks lined up against the cellar wall. I thought, that's it? That's how a family of 9 eats through a winter? It was. And before the end of this, I'm going to show you the exact method they use to seal one, including one step from a United States Department of Agriculture bulletin printed in 1909 that almost nobody alive remembers. And if you already own your home, even an old one, this works in the house you have right now. No remodel, no permit, no contractor. Stay with me, because what I found goes a lot deeper than a clay pot. Let me tell you what spoiled food is actually costing you, because the number is worse than you think. The average American family throws away around $1,500 of food every year. That's not my guess. That's measured. Roughly 1/3 of everything you buy at the store ends up in the trash. You carry it in through the front door, and a week later you carry it out to the curb. Think about what that really is. You worked for that money. You drove to the store. You stood in line, you put it in the fridge with good intentions, and then the bread went green, the lettuce went to slime, the rice got little bugs in it, the flour smelled like a wet basement. And here's the cruel part. You did everything they told you to do. You bought the special containers. You bought the bags that zip. You set the fridge to the right number. You followed the rules. And the food still died on you, because the system was never built to keep your food. The system was built to keep you buying a freezer that needs power forever, bags you throw out and rebuy, plastic tubs that crack and stain and hold the smell of last month's onions. Every single one of those things has one thing in common. You have to keep paying for it. Now, picture the opposite. Picture opening a container you sealed 2 years ago, and the rice inside looks exactly like the day you poured it in. No bugs, no smell, no clumps. Picture flour that's still good after a decade. Picture salt, sugar, beans, oats, cornmeal, dried fruit, even cheese and butter handled the old way, sitting safe while the power's out and the stores are empty. That's not a fantasy. That's a Tuesday in an Amish cellar, and the thing that makes it possible costs about as much as a gallon of milk. So let me tell you what the object actually is, because the moment I say it, you're going to picture the wrong thing, and I need you to picture the right one. It's a stoneware crock. Plain, heavy, brown or gray clay, fired hot until it turns to something close to stone. You've seen them. Maybe you've got one holding umbrellas by your door right now. Maybe one's full of old wooden spoons on your counter. What you're looking at is one of the most effective food preservation tools ever made. And the reason it works comes down to 3 enemies. Just 3. Oxygen, moisture, and light. Kill those 3, and most food simply stops spoiling. A real stoneware crock fights all 3 at once. The walls are thick, so the temperature inside stays steady and cool even when the room warms up. The clay is dense and fired with a salt glaze, so it doesn't breathe like a basket and it doesn't sweat like plastic, and it's completely solid to light. No sun gets in, no fluorescent glow gets in. Light breaks down the fats and vitamins in food faster than almost anything, and most people store their food in clear bags right under a kitchen light. The Amish never did. They didn't have the kitchen light to begin with. So they kept what worked. Now, the crock alone isn't the whole trick. The crock is the body. The method is the soul. And the method is so simple you'll wonder why nobody handed it to you 40 years ago. You put your dry food in, then you create a barrier on top. The old way was a clean cloth, then a layer of melted beeswax or rendered fat poured to seal the surface, then a wooden or stoneware lid weighted down. That seal locks the oxygen out, and once the oxygen is gone, the bugs can't live, the mold can't grow, and the fats can't turn rancid. That's the entire principle behind every fancy modern thing they sell you. The vacuum sealer, the oxygen absorber, the nitrogen flushed bag All of it is just an expensive way to do what a $4 crock and a spoon of beeswax did in 1850. But there's a reason you've never been taught this, and that reason is where the story gets uncomfortable. Let me take you back, because the history here matters. It tells you who decided you should forget. Before the icebox, before the refrigerator, every farmhouse in America ran on this kind of storage. Root cellars, crocks, salt boxes, smokehouses. A family could put up enough food in the fall to carry them clean through to spring, and they did it without a single watt of power. The knowledge was everywhere. It was in the women's heads, passed mother to daughter. It was in farm manuals. It was printed by the government itself. That United States Department of Agriculture bulletin I mentioned from 1909 laid out crock storage and brine and dry pack methods in plain language for any farmer to follow. The government used to teach this. Think about that. Then something shifted. In the 1920s and 1930s, the electric refrigerator came to market. General Electric put out the monitor top in 1927, and the whole industry went to work convincing American families that the old ways were dirty, backward, and unsafe. There was money in that. A crock you buy once, a refrigerator you buy, then power forever, then replace every 15 years. Cornell and Penn State extension offices, which once printed pamphlets on home crock preserving, slowly shifted their materials toward the appliances and the store-bought cans, not because the old way stopped working. It never stopped working, but because the new way had a sales force behind it and the old way had nobody. And here's the thing, nobody points out. The Amish were sitting right there the whole time. They never plugged in. They never bought the story. They kept the crocks, kept the cellars, kept the methods their great-grandparents used. So while the rest of the country forgot in a single generation, the Amish became a living library of exactly the knowledge everyone else threw away. That's why I drive out to Holmes County. That's why I sit at those tables, because they're holding the manual the rest of us lost. And if you want to go even deeper than what I can cover in a single video, I need to tell you about something I put together for exactly this moment. I spent years pulling together everything I learned in those Holmes County kitchens and cellars into a complete written guide, the Amish Pantry Blueprint and the Amish Stockpile Blueprint, available together as the Complete Amish Resilience Field Edition. It's the full system: the crocks, the cellars, the sealing methods, the moisture controls, the forgotten steps that get you to 25 years of storage, all of it laid out so you can do it in the house you already own. You can find it linked in the description, or go directly to li-yoder-survival.com. It's $97 for everything, and it will save you multiples of that in the first year alone. This is the manual the rest of us were never handed. Now, back to the second enemy I haven't fully dealt with yet, and it's the one that ruins more stored food than oxygen ever will. Moisture. That's the silent killer. You can seal a container perfectly and still lose everything inside it if there's moisture trapped in the food when you close the lid. Moisture is what lets mold take hold. Moisture is what turns flour to a brick and rice to a science experiment. And the worst part is you can't always see it going in. The grain feels dry to your hand, but there's water in there at the microscopic level, and over months it does its quiet damage. The Amish solve this two ways, and both are nearly free. The first is salt. Plain salt is one of the most powerful moisture pullers on Earth. A small cloth pouch of dry salt set on top of stored grain inside the crock pulls the loose moisture out of the air around the food. They've done it for 200 years. A spoonful of salt in a bit of cloth, tied off and dropped in before the seal. It costs pennies. And it works because salt is what's called hygroscopic, which is just a fancy word for it. Grabs water out of the air and holds it. The second way is even older. Wood ash. Clean, dry, hardwood ash from the stove. The Amish near Berlin, Ohio, line the bottom of root cellars and certain crocks with it because ash pulls moisture and it makes the environment hostile to insects and mold at the same time. The old farm manuals from the 1800s talk about packing eggs and root vegetables in ash and sand to carry them deep into winter. Free material, sitting in the bottom of a wood stove, doing the job of a $30 dehumidifier. So now you've got the full picture starting to form. The crock blocks light and holds the cool. The seal blocks the oxygen. The salt and the ash block the moisture. 3 enemies, 3 cheap defenses, 1 object holding it all together. And I can already hear what some of you are thinking. This is fine for somebody building a new farmhouse with a stone cellar, but what about me in the house I've already got? Now, if you already own a house and you're thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me because this next part is specifically for you. You do not need a root cellar. You do not need a renovation. You do not need to dig anything or knock out a single wall. The whole point of the crock is that it creates the cellar conditions inside itself wherever you put it. If your home was built before 1980, here's a gift you already own and probably never thought about. The north wall of your home, the north side, gets the least sun all year long. The interior corner of a north-facing room, down low near the floor, stays several degrees cooler than the rest of the house. Put your crock there. A closet on the north wall, the bottom shelf of a pantry against an outside wall. The floor of a coat closet you never use. Older homes have another secret most people pour money to get rid of. The basement. That damp, cool basement you run a dehumidifier in all summer. The cool part is exactly what you want. You set a sealed crock down there up on a wooden board so it's not flat on the concrete, and you've recreated a 19th century cellar for the cost of the crock and a scrap of wood, and here's the step that makes it bulletproof in a modern house. Before you seal, you dry your food properly, spread your rice or flour or beans on a sheet pan, put it in your oven on the lowest setting with the door cracked for an hour or two. That drives off the hidden moisture. Let it cool completely. Then load the crock, drop in your salt pouch, seal the top, and put the lid on. That's it. You just did in your existing kitchen what the Amish do in their cellar, and you didn't ask anyone's permission. Because here's the thing they never wanted you to realize. You don't need their system. You never did. You can step out of it with a $4 crock in an afternoon, and that's exactly where this starts to make certain people uncomfortable. Because once you can store a year of food in your own home with no power and no monthly cost, you stop being a reliable customer. Let me show you who actually loses when you learn this. Because there's a reason it got buried, and it's not an accident. When you store your own food the old way, the grocery store sells you less, the packaging company sells you fewer bags and tubs, the appliance company sells you fewer freezers, the power company sells you fewer kilowatts running that freezer in your garage day and night for 30 years. Every link in that chain makes money off the fact that your food spoils and you depend on them to keep buying more. A crock breaks the chain. One time, for $4. Now, I'm not telling you there's a man in a boardroom who banned crocks. It's quieter than that, and it's worse than that. It's 100 years of marketing that taught your parents and your grandparents that the old way was shameful, that a woman with a root cellar was poor. That progress meant plugging in and throwing out. They didn't outlaw the knowledge. They just made you embarrassed to want it. And embarrassment kills knowledge faster than any law. Think about how much you've paid over your lifetime because of that. Decades of refrigerator replacements, decades of power bills with that freezer humming in the background, decades of grocery runs to replace food that rotted before you got to it, $1,500 a year, every year in food alone. Over a 40-year adult life, that's $60,000, walked straight to the curb in a trash bag. The Amish family near Mount Hope I told you about, they spend almost nothing to keep a winter's worth of food. Not because they're poor. Because they're free. There's a difference, and most of us were never shown it. But I promised you something specific. I promised you the one step from that 1909 bulletin that almost nobody remembers, and now you've earned it. Because this is the piece that takes you from a few months of storage to 25 years. And this is the part I had to ask 3 different families about before someone finally walked me down to the cellar and showed me. It's the finale. And it's so simple it almost made me angry that I'd never heard it. Here it is. The secret isn't just sealing the oxygen out. The secret is removing the oxygen that's already trapped inside the food before you seal. And the old way to do that didn't need a single piece of modern equipment. They used a candle, a plain candle. You fill the crock with your dry food, leaving a few inches of air at the top. You set a short-lit candle right on top of the food or in a small holder resting on it. Then you put the lid on, not fully sealed, just resting. The flame burns, and as it burns, it consumes the oxygen inside that closed space. When the oxygen runs low, the flame goes out on its own. You've now got a crock where most of the breathable oxygen has been eaten by the flame and replaced with carbon dioxide, which insects and mold cannot live in. Then, and only then, you bring the seal down tight. That United States Department of Agriculture material from the early 1900s described versions of this oxygen displacement idea using flame and tight sealing for grain storage, the same principle the expensive oxygen absorber packets use today. A little iron powder in a packet that rusts and eats the oxygen. The Amish did it with a candle flame and a steady hand a century before those packets existed. And there's one more layer the old-timers added, the layer that gets you to 25 years on dry staples. A bay leaf, a few dry bay leaves tucked into the grain. The oils in bay leaf repel weevils and grain moths. Farm wives put them in flour barrels going back generations, and university entomology studies in the last few decades have confirmed that the compounds in bay leaf genuinely interfere with grain insects. A free leaf, doing the work of a chemical fumigant. So, picture the full method now, the way it's really done. Cool dark spot, thick stoneware crock, food dried in the oven and cooled, salt pouch, and a little wood ash for moisture. Bay leaves for the bugs, a candle burned on top to eat the oxygen. Then the cloth, the beeswax or fat, the lid, the weight. You walk away and you come back in a year or 5 years or 25 years and it's still food. That's the whole secret. Not one trick. A stack of simple, free, forgotten steps that each kill one enemy, layered together by people who couldn't run to the store and couldn't plug anything in, so they had to get it exactly right. And they did get it right. Generations ago, while the rest of us were being taught to forget. I want you to sit with what that means for a second. Everything I just described costs less than one trip through a fast food drive-thru. The crock, $4 at a sale. Salt, ash, a candle, a few bay leaves, all things you likely have in your house tonight. And it replaces a lifetime of power bills, plastic, and waste. You were sold complexity. The truth was simple the whole time. You were sold dependence. The freedom was sitting in your grandmother's pantry, brown and plain and heavy, and somebody convinced you it was junk. Let me give you the honest part. The part the salesman never will. Will it keep ice cream? No. This is for dry staples and the foods our great-grandparents actually stored. Grains, beans, flour, sugar, salt, dried fruit, dried meat, root vegetables in sand, eggs in lime. The foods that carried this country through every hard winter before the grid existed, that's not a small list. That's the foundation of how human beings ate for 10,000 years. The refrigerator is barely 100 years old. The crock kept us alive for all the rest of it. So here's what I want you to do this weekend. Find one crock, a real stoneware one, not a decorative imitation. Check it for cracks by tapping it and listening for a clean ring instead of a dull thud. Take it home. Wash it, dry a few pounds of rice in your oven, and do the method, start to finish, just once. Put it in the coolest, darkest corner of the house you already own, and let it sit. In a year, open it, and when that rice pours out clean and fresh and exactly the way it went in, you're going to understand something that no commercial will ever tell you. You'll understand that you were never as dependent as they needed you to feel. That's the thing they took from you. Not a clay pot. The knowledge that you could take care of your own, that a family could be safe and fed without asking permission from a single company or paying a single monthly bill to do it. That's what got buried under 100 years of marketing. And you just dug it back up. If you're the kind of person who believes real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect somebody else's profit, then you already know what to do next. You feel it the same way I felt it standing in that cellar in Holmes County, wondering how I'd lived almost 60 years and never once been told. So tell me one thing in the comments. Do you have a stoneware crock in your house right now? Or did one sit in your family's home growing up? Tell me where it was and what it held. I read these and I want to know how many of us were sitting on this and never knew. Leave the comment. Don't just scroll past. This audience, your voice is part of how this knowledge comes back. And if you want the rest of what I'm digging up, come with me. This isn't a channel. It's a group of people putting back together everything that was taken apart on purpose. Next time, I'm going to show you how those same Amish families keep eggs fresh for over a year on a pantry shelf, no refrigeration, using nothing but water and one cheap white powder from the 19th century. You will not believe how simple it is. And once you see it, you'll never look at a carton of eggs the same way again. The crock was just the beginning. Stay with me. There's a lot more they hoped we'd forget.